Jay here, welcome to EonsOfBattle. I have played a lot of war games. I love war games and I have a lot of opinions about war games. And today I want to go through every single one that I have played. I have really played like multiple games of, because I've demoed almost everything. But these are the games that I have actually played, and I have the pros and the cons. Starting out with the big kahuna, Warhammer 40,000. Warhammer 40,000 might be the greatest war game of all time, and possibly the worst war game of all time, but it is a masterpiece. You need tons and tons of miniatures, you need tons and tons of time, and you do kind of need a lot of really detailed knowledge and understanding of the game to get the most out of it. The best thing about 40K, I would say, is the community. There's tons and tons of people playing the game. There's lots of local clubs, tournaments, a lot of tournaments. Like there's so many resources for the game. There's Auspex Tactics, there's Tactical Tortoise, there's the artist formerly known as Goonhammer. There's so much available for the world of Warhammer 40K so that you can really sink your teeth into, and even when you're not actually playing the game, you can still be like enjoying the game in the list building and preparation step. It's really cool. I would say the downside of 40K is the game itself can be a lot, and I think to actually have some real fun playing the game, you do kind of need to know everything. Like once you have full knowledge and you've read every single rule, then the game becomes really fun. You know, you have situations where you're looking across the table at your opponent's army and you're like, ooh, Tyranid Assimilation Swarm. I'm familiar with that detachment and I'm really excited to see what it does. Like that's when the game becomes really fun. And in order to get there, it takes a lot of time. And speaking of games that take a lot of time, Age of Sigmar, the fantasy 40K. The games are actually fairly different, and at least from playing in tournaments, like I'm usually playing 40K, but I look across the gaming hall at the Age of Sigmar players, and they do seem to be having a phenomenal time. And I would say that 40K tends to skew younger, and then Age of Sigmar tends to skew older, and the older players, their armies are always beautifully painted and absolutely immaculately based. You see a lot of people who've spent like a decade putting together their force and kit bashing and converting everything to be absolutely immaculate. Age of Sigmar players are a different breed. It looks like a really fun game. I've only gotten to play it a couple of times, but really I would say that the best thing about Age of Sigmar is Age of Sigmar Spearhead. The little baby version of Age of Sigmar might be the best war game ever made. It's really good. Where 40K has Combat Patrol, which is nothing and no one cares or plays it, Age of Sigmar Spearhead is actually a tailor-made game for having a small fighting force against another small fighting force, and it's really fun. The card system, the way you score points, the way your army kind of is built for you, but you do still have a little bit of room to buy your character's equipment and upgrades. It's a really good system. And even though I don't really play Age of Sigmar, even though I have two full Age of Sigmar armies, I own like so many Spearhead boxes, and I've played with them all. I've got at least 100 games of Spearhead under my belt. I've played in multiple Spearhead tournaments. It's a really fun time. I would say the only negative to Age of Sigmar Spearhead, man, it's just kind of a perfect game. It's hard to come up with any negatives to say, because if you don't like a Spearhead, you can just pick a different one. I would say actually balance is a slight issue with Age of Sigmar Spearhead. There's a couple of really high damage output Spearhead armies that I do feel like can make the game a little bit less fun. Like the really high, there's a giant middle ground of armies that play really well and are kind of in a medium tier, but I think the couple of outliers at the top do kind of hold back the rest of the pack. But you know, you just tell Sean not to play those armies and all of a sudden the game becomes fun again. Moving on to Warhammer 40,000 Kill Team. Kill Team is a really interesting game because you'd think it would just be baby 40K, but it's really not. Typically you have 10 to 14 operatives, and each of those guys is their own unique guy. Classically, there's like knife guy, there's grenades guy, there's teleportation guy. but your gaggle of 10 goons against another similar force, and the way that the game is actually balanced, and the way it's alternating activation, which is kind of unique in a 40k setting, the game actually plays very tactically and very, very fun. And it's like the perfect amount of war game in your war game. And the combat system is really, really interesting, where both players roll all of their combat dice at once and then create a pool that they then alternate spending from. It's a really, really unique, interesting system that I think works really, really well. It does make you feel like you and your opponent are in a little melee battle, and you can parry, or you can strike, or you can do other things. It is a really, really fun system. I would say the flaw of Kill Team is what Games Workshop has done to the price of this game. It is outrageous. It used to be like $62.50 got you whatever group of guys you wanted, but the prices bumped up tremendously on some of these teams to the point where it's a little annoying. Like Space Marine Scouts are $80. That's too many dollars for 10 little Space Marine guys. It's really annoying because it's trying to get people into this game, and they see all of the, they flip through the book and they look at all of the different teams and they're like, oh, these guys are really cool. Yeah, those are one of the really expensive ones. Maybe you should look harder at the cheaper teams. Like, that's lame. They should all be the same price point so that everybody can look and say, I like these guys, I'll have them, please. That's how it should be, but apparently Games Workshop disagrees. Kill Team is a pretty competitive, pretty balanced game. Necromunda is another 40k game that is not particularly balanced, but is actually really, really fun. I think part of it not being balanced, I think actually makes the game more fun because it's a much more role-playing game. It's a similar rule set where you have a bunch of guys that alternating activate, although instead of just having a list pre-made for you out of the operatives in the box, you kind of do get to tailor every single guy specifically to what you want. Do you want House Escher that leans heavily into flamethrowers? You can do that. Do you want Goliath, but only punchy fists? You can do that too. You have a giant pool of resources that you can spend in order to outfit every single guy. And some of them are gonna be extremely expensive because you really tool them up to the nines, and some of them are gonna be really, really cheap. Just a guy, a little bit of armor, and a pipe wrench. And that's all they've got. It's a really, really interesting game because you can really tailor it and build it however you want. And then it's just your guys versus your opponent's guys. And it's a really, really fun little war game. And it's not built, it's in the world of Warhammer 40k, but it's on such a small scale. It's one hive city, and it's like one street corner of that hive city. It's very low stakes in the actual world of 40k, but it's still got that nice flavor. The problem with Necromunda a little bit is you do kind of have to know everything going in because, should I put a flamethrower or a stub gun or a needle pistol or a bolter or a flamethrower or a grenade launcher or a grenade belt or flak armor or heavy armor, or you do kind of have to know what all of these things are before you just willy-nilly go buying stuff for your gangers. And there is the little tricky thing of what my models are physically holding and wearing versus what I've given them in the game. And so this is a really, really good game. If you know somebody who plays Necromunda, glob onto them and have them help you tool up your guys, because it is very frustrating to sit down with that really pretty box of Necromunda and just not know what to do. I mean, there's instructions to tell you how to build them, but how should you build them? It's a little tricky. Moving out of the world of Warhammer, Moonstone. Moonstone might be the best game ever made. It's beautiful, it's wonderful, it's Germanic fairy tale miniatures that battle it out without dice. This game is built around 2 decks of cards, and you use these cards to do all of your actions in the game. You gotta pick up Moonstones, you gotta fisticuffs your opponents. It's a really, really fun little game of bluffing and moving. The only problem I would say with Moonstone is the setting. It's my jam, I love it. I love the look of all of these characters, but I know Sean, who agrees with me that the game is beautiful and perfectly written and really, really nicely balanced, but it's just the flavor is not his jam, and I have not gotten him to play Moonstone with me yet. But if you don't like the look of fairy tale, it's probably not the game for you, but if you really like the look of the minis, the game it's attached to is phenomenal. Speaking of other phenomenal games, X-Wing. X-Wing, the miniatures game, these little pre-painted ships, is a wonderful game. It takes all of the shenanigans out of moving because you actually have these templates and you move from one side of the template to the other. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of moving, which is really important because moving is the most important thing you can do in the game. It's really good, it's really quick, it's really fast paced. The problem with X-Wing is it's a dead game. Technically, I think they're in 2.5 edition, but I think that their manufacturer is going to be stopping production of the miniatures soon if they haven't already. And although there's a little bit of tournament support and a little bit of online support for this game, it kind of doesn't really exist. Its heyday was like 2015, and it's kind of been on a downhill trajectory since then because the updates for the game have been very mismanaged. However, there are some online communities and some online resources that have kept the game alive and are kind of carrying the torch for X-Wing. So even though it's officially a dead game, the models are still out there, the game is still playable. A couple of months ago at my local club, I saw some people on the table next to me playing X-Wing. It's still out there and it's still a great game. Staying in space for a while, Drop Fleet Commander is a miniatures battle game that takes place not necessarily in space, but it is a fleet versus fleet game. If you want to move some big old ships around, a lot of big old ships around, this is probably the game for you. It is big. You can fire a torpedo that takes multiple turns to get to your opponents. You can deploy squadrons of fighters that can also take multiple turns to get to where you need them to be. It's a really, really dense, big game. Your ship can take damage, fall out of orbit, and then need to spend time getting back into orbit. Like, it's a really crunchy war game that is really, really fun. Really, the only tricky thing with Drop Fleet Commander is you do need a lot of miniatures. It does help to have a little bit of knowledge going into the game because a lot of the miniature range, like every one ship can be built as like 4 or 5 different things. So this is another game where it helped to have a buddy who kind of knows what's going on to help you on your journey of getting your fleet constructed. And then you also just kind of need a space mat, or like you need a little bit of smaller terrain in order to get the game looking as pretty as you'd want it to look, but it's a really, really fun one. Another fleet-based game, Armada by Mantic, not to be confused with the Armada that is the larger fleet version of X-Wing. Mantic's Armada is a fantasy ship game on the high seas, and it actually is somewhat similar to Drop Fleet Commander, but it's not quite as crunchy. It feels more like a typical classic war game, and it does work pretty well. There are some really, really fun factions. A lot of the factions are just a fleet of rigged ships, but then you get some stuff like the sea monsters that make the game a little bit more fantastical. And I think the last update to the game did actually bring aircraft into the setting. It's pretty good. The flaw with Armada is, I would say, the movement system. Without the use of templates or a grid, you are forced to actually very specifically move your ship and then move at its minimum distance. And it can be really hard to do all of that pivoting as perfectly as you want, because if you ever collide with an enemy ship, there's an entire page of rules dedicated to ship collisions, and it's quite a process to go through. And it can be, really frustrating when you collide, and it can be really frustrating when your opponent missed a collision by millimeters, and you're like, did you really miss the collision, or did we get a little tricky with the movements? Me and Sean playing Armada, it got a little heated sometimes. But you know what never gets heated? Arena Rex. Arena Rex is a cute little war game. I see it every year at Adepticon, and every year I buy miniatures. This is gladiatorial combat. It's kind of a historical game, but definitely with a little bit of a fantasy skew. The miniatures are absolutely gorgeous, and the game system functions really, really well. It's actually like a 20-year-old war game, and so a lot of the concepts in the game feel kind of novel right now, just because they've existed for so long. A lot of games don't use them, although a lot of their game mechanics are making their way into newer games. I know Marvel Crisis Protocol and Guild Ball both use elements of this game, like very, very similar elements, almost the exact same elements of this rule set. And so it's interesting to see this older war game kind of making a comeback, and some of its historical rules are almost coming back into vogue in more modern tabletop games. It's a really, really fun game. The only problem is the miniatures are beautiful, but they can be a real pain in the butt to actually assemble and paint. Like, yet I see them in the case and they look so gorgeous. Every single miniature painted up to a beyond a display level. And that's what I want my models to look like. And so even though I've played the game many times, I only have, I think, 4 miniatures actually Dunyan rings and like 3 more in various stages of completion. But one day I would love a perfect, beautiful copy of this game. Speaking of games, I would love a beautiful copy of Idols of Torment. This is Black Magicraft's game, and I picked it up one year at Adepticon, and I played a couple games of it, and I was very pleasantly surprised. It's a little war game, almost board gamey, but it plays really, really well. The miniatures are a little chess-like in that you kind of have your pawns, and then you have your specials, and the specials are really good at killing humans and scoring your objectives, the thing that actually wins you the game. But they're really wimpy and easy to lose, where your pawns are really powerful and they have good movement shenanigans, but they have a really hard time of killing the humans and scoring your points. And so it's this kind of balance of, using your bruisers to kind of push away the enemy team while trying to capture your humans, while kind of keeping your powerful guys in reserves, because even though they're physically powerful, it's hard to give them the opportunities for them to do what they need to do. It's a really interesting game. There's movement shenanigans with the terrain. The actual objectives, the humans that you're meant to be killing in this game, can run around. And so you have to sometimes try to make them run away from your opponent and towards you. There's a lot of really, really interesting stuff. The only problem with this game is it's somewhat miniature agnostic. Black Magicraft does have some actual teams of characters that you can use in the game, but having it be so open-ended has been what led me to not having a full set of this stuff ready to go, because I do want to build the terrain perfectly and I do want to put together the crews perfectly, but it's just gonna take a lot of time to figure out exactly what I wanna do. Where if there was like a 2-player starter set or just like something ready to rock and roll, I probably would have already painted it up, because the game is really, really tight. Speaking of a game that's really, really tight, Starcraft Tabletop Miniatures game. I've played 5 or 6 games of this. It's actually really, really solid. It's a brand new war game, and so it's got newfangled rules. It feels a little 40K, but if you've played 40K, the thing that's gonna feel really different about Starcraft is you don't deploy all of your stuff immediately. You actually have an allowance of things that you're allowed to put down on the board. And so you might have 10 units, but you're only allowed to put down 3 at a time. And then if something dies, that does increase your allowance. And then next turn you get 2 more allowance. And so you have to think like, do I just put my Hydralisks on the board and that's kind of it because they're so expensive? Or do I flood the board in stuff and then hope that eventually enough of it has died off and achieved what it needed to achieve that now I can bring on my Hydralisks? That's a really, really interesting way to have the game, and to have the game actually go all of the rounds, because 40K, typically turn 1 and 2 is an absolute bloodbath, and by the end of the game, it's just the dregs, and the turn actually lasts a few minutes, where StarCraft actually has a really good flow for the entire game, because not everything is there the whole time. StarCraft is really, really fun. The only tricky thing with StarCraft is it's a brand spanking new game, so there's a very limited number of things in the game. They're coming out with new stuff all the time, but it's gonna take a while for it to feel really full. Right now, it's kinda starter set versus starter set right now. Next up, going back to the high seas, Blood and Plunder. Blood and Plunder is a historical war game that doesn't feel like a historical war game. It feels like a classic war game, a little bit like Kill Team, like a little bit like a skirmish game, but it has rules for everything. It has rules for loading a cannon, preparing a cannon, firing a cannon. It has rules for lowering the sails, raising the sails. Like the game is pretty quick and easy, but the sheer scope of what you can do with this game is really, really deep. At Adepticon this year, they were doing demos of Blood and Plunder, And they had written a custom scenario where it's like a group of Spanish sailors who run into the Predator, like the film Predator. And that's a perfectly doable scenario, and it works great with the actual game system. It's really, really interesting. If you ever wanted to dip your toes into historicals, I think Blood and Plunder is the way to do it, because the early 1700s is a really interesting time period, and the game actually plays really, really well. A lot of historicals can be historical war games, but this one feels a lot more similar to like 40K or Kill Team or Age of Sigmar. I really, really like it. I would say the only downside of Blood and Plunder is that historical time period. And like, I don't have a perfect 17th century, coast of America, or like, I don't have a set of terrain to perfectly go along with this game. And I want one. I want forts. You need a giant board. You need a bunch of water. You need a bunch of land. You need hills. You need trees. You need buildings. You need cannons. You need embankments. Like a lighthouse would be super cool. Like you need it, you feel like you want all of this stuff to really get the game cooking. And currently I don't have that stuff, but I'm working on it. Speaking of fantasy, Fallout Wasteland Warfare, the first Fallout miniature war game. I didn't like this game. It's a war game. It's not a strategy game. It's a role-playing game that thinks it's a war game. Holy tokens, Batman. This game is so incredibly dense, and I've actually heard it's really good solo. If you want to run scenarios by yourself, it's a really, really great game because everything is a thing you can do. You can drink a Nuka-Cola, which gives you certain abilities, and then it makes your range go from like 5 inches to 7 inches. It's really, really incredibly crunchy. But I don't want crunchy, I just want to play Fallout. I want the game to feel as easy as the actual video game, because I'm a huge Fallout video game fan. Luckily, my prayers were answered with Fallout Factions. This is a new version that uses the same miniatures, but it's a real war game. Fallout Factions is really, really good. Written by the same guy who wrote current Necromunda, it is a really good little skirmish game that actually has some really interesting little tweaks to the classic skirmish game ways that you play the game. You can group activate things, you can have characters share energy with each other. It's really, really tight, and it's really, really cool. The way that like a typical round 1 of a skirmish game is this guy moves and advances, this guy moves and advances, this guy moves and advances. And that's what both players do 10 times for the entire first turn. But in this one, you can just have one guy activate and then say, come on, gang, and have like 4 other guys go with them. And it makes like turn 1 take minutes as opposed to forever. I really, really like Fallout Factions. It's everything I wanted out of Fallout Wasteland Warfare. Next up, we got Trench Crusade, another kind of skirmishy war game. Trench Crusade is all about the vibe. If you like the look of Trench Crusade, the game is pretty darn good. I really, really like the system of like whenever you take damage, you might have taken damage, like you might be dead, but you might be sorta kind of fine. And you can be bleeding out, but you have a chance of getting up, but you also have a chance of your opponent walking over and then just curb stomping you and finishing you off. It's a really, really interesting little system that feels as brutal as the artwork and the actual game setting suggests. The tricky thing with Trench Crusade is you can't play this game with trench terrain. It doesn't work. It's terrible. I've played on beautiful trench boards and it doesn't work. You need some tight, you need a really, really tight little maze-like environment. I would say the EonsOfBattle terrain is perfect for Trench Crusade. Fighting in catacombs is so much fun. Where if you're fighting out in the open, then Sean's machine guns are just gonna take you out from a mile away. Next up, Conflict 47, another historical game, but not really. It's a weird, wacky World War II. The miniatures are incredibly fun, and if you've ever played Bolt Action, it's very similar to Bolt Action, but with more weirdness bolted onto it. The rift mechanism is really, really interesting, way to empower certain units. It's really, really cool. And I would say that it's an army game, but it's a little bit of a lighter army game. Like 40K, you need like 50 to 100 miniatures. You need a lot less with Conflict 47, but your miniatures do more things over the course of the game. So you still feel like you're really playing and you're really fighting, but it doesn't take the incredible investment that like 40K does. Next up, we're looking at Star Wars Legion. If you like Star Wars, you'll like Star Wars Legion. If you like 40K, you'll probably like Star Wars Legion. It does feel like a much more modern version of 40K. Its rules are a lot cleaner and a lot more precise. And you get to play with stormtroopers and rebels and clone troopers and battle droids. It's if you want to play, if your favorite movie was Episode 2 Attack of the Clones, but not for the plot, for the action scenes, you're really, really gonna like this game. Star Wars Legion is tons and tons of fun. It's had numerous updates just to get everything a little cleaner and a little tighter. I would almost say the tricky thing with Star Wars Legion is that there's so many options now, because you can even play like Scum and Villainy. You can play not just clone troopers, but you can play Wookiees specifically. It actually now has expanded so broadly, and there's so many options available to you that it can actually be kind of tricky to actually know what to do and how to collect this game. Although there's some really good articles on Goonhammer, which is not called Goonhammer anymore. Next up, Malifaux. Malifaux is a really cool skirmish game. You don't need that many miniatures, and the miniatures are gorgeous. They're plastic, and like if you like the vibe of Malifaux, it's a really, really crunchy war game. Although this is another one of those war games that does not require dice. Everybody plays with a standard deck of cards, and you draw off the deck, and that's essentially your roll. And then you also have a hand of cards that you can swap out for the one that you picked up. And if you wanted a high roll or a low roll, you can kind of cheat something in. But the tricky part is your opponent also has a deck of hands that they can cheat from. And so you kind of got to think like, okay, do I want to make sure that this happens, or do I want to make sure that I have something later to try to stop my opponent? It's a really, really interesting game that plays very, very differently than any other war game. I'd say the only problem with Malifaux is this is another one of those games that has such a vibe that if you don't vibe with it, it's probably not worth it for you. Like if you don't like this weird Victorian aesthetic, if you don't like the craziness of the setting and the weirdness of the world, it's probably not the game for you. Next up, we got Infinity. If you can play Infinity, you can play any war game. This one is hard. Infinity is improbably difficult. The rule book is intense. And then once you think you finally got the hang of it, you flip the page and then it says advanced rules. And you're like, advanced rules, this is 75% of the book. It's actually a little bit intimidating, but it is a really, really interesting game. Also, the miniatures are absolutely gorgeous. I would almost say that Infinity is the flip side of Malifaux. Malifaux isn't as hard as Infinity, it's not as dense, but similarly, like Malifaux has a real Victorian vibe, and Infinity has a real anime vibe. And so I think you can definitely hang on for the aesthetics of the characters, but the actual game itself is a lot. Some people, I think the people who really, really like Infinity adore Infinity because there's nothing else like it. It's a trip. On the absolute reverse of that though, one-page rules. One-page rules is the simple war game, and it really is. It's sort of not one physical page, but you do need one page of reading rules to actually get playing the game. And then there's a couple more pages of what your guys do specifically. It is an incredibly simple game system that does hit all the points. Like if you've played 40K, you do go through all of the same systems and things to actually play a game of one-page rules. I would say the tricky thing with one-page rules is that simplicity. I don't know if there's a ton there to really keep you coming back for more unless you're just constantly moving through different factions. And it being completely miniature agnostic is kind of its strength as well. There's even a, on the one-page rules, I think if you subscribe to their Patreon, you get full access to their unit creators. So if you are like, I really, really want an army of unicorns, you can make that happen, and you can make your heavy assault unicorns and your fast attack unicorns. You can do absolutely anything you want, and the game is designed for you to be able to do that. One-page rules is incredibly simple, almost as simple as how easy it is to find EonsOfBattle.com. Over there, we have all sorts of hobby goodies, Gamer Grass Tufts, Great Head Studio Bits for your Space Marines, Army Painter paints, brushes, base and cork, ultra thin and ultra thick super glue, and we've got terrain. It's the best way to support us doing what we do by getting a membership. Each month, members get a credit good for any one terrain pack I've ever made, or the brand new one. This August, we have created the Deadly Swamp Bits Pack, a set of natural terrain bits to help set your miniatures in a perilous natural environment. There are some rock walls and fallen logs for figures to take cover behind or stand proudly on, and also included are some small bits for adding natural details to your minis' bases and spooky trees for blocking line of sight. All these bits are perfect for scatter, and if you arrange these parts in a circle, you can make some very ominous pools of water. This set was designed by us and is available at EonsOfBattle.com. One more game to talk about, and this one is a little bit of an honorable mention, but Space Hulk. Space Hulk. It's a little board gamey, but you need the biggest possible board to play this game. It's massive, and there's a ton of miniatures, and there's a bunch of scenarios to go through. One player plays the Blood Angels Terminator Space Marines, and one player plays the Gene Stealers, the endless swarm of Gene Stealers, and it is brilliant. It is perfect. It is a really, really, really fun game if you can get a hold of a copy. The last time it was available, I think, was 2016, and it hasn't been available since, which seems crazy, because it's like the best game Games Workshop has ever made, and yet it's so incredibly limited. But it's so good that it's endured. Every year at Adepticon, a whole bunch of gamers get together to play a mega Space Hulk game where they put many folding tables together and absolutely cover it in the entire, they cover the entire surface in these spaceship tiles. You've got multiple squads of Blood Angels. I mean, I think the lore of Space Hulk is the entire Blood Angels chapter, which doesn't make any sense, went into a Space Hulk and fought the Gene Stealers and was almost completely wiped out to a man. Like, it's really, really cool. And if you ever get a chance to play this game, it's incredibly worth it. And there was a video game that was a perfect port of this game. It's not available right now, but it's online, it's available. If you ever really wanted to play the game, there is a really good video game version of the Tabletop Miniatures game. But Space Hulk is really, really good. And one day, Games Workshop will re-release Space Hulk, and everyone should get it because it's incredibly fun. If you have friends that don't quite want to play war games with you because they're a lot of work, like Space Hulk is the perfect thing of like, okay, it's not really a war game. It's kind of a board game. It all fits in a box, sort of. You know, we'll make it happen, and they're gonna have so much fun because it's a wonderful, wonderful game. And that is every war game that I have played to the point where I feel like I really get the game. It does take a really, really long time and a lot of investment to play war games, and there's a giant list of more war games that I want to play. And please let me know in the comments below, like give me some suggestions of what war games really, really jingle your jangles and flim your flams, because I'm always looking for new ones. Having now gone through every game in my collection, I mean, Moonstone is the one that I really, really want to play, and also 40K, but I've got a whole bunch of things working on 40K. I don't know, maybe it's time to just put it all aside and break out the Malifaux again. One of these days. Thanks for watching.